Does anyone have a question?
I have a question, Stuart.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what Rudy taught about death. Big question.
You know, look, uh, hard to put into words what Rudy thought. I mean, look, when you do deep meditation, whether it's what I teach or anyone else teaches, uh, the whole purpose of it is to eliminate these concepts that we have in our brain. I mean, the soul of a human being doesn't die. The soul of a human being keeps evolving endlessly until it's learned what it has to learn so that it can truly become one with God. Uh, Life and death, they're really just conceptualizations that we have in our brain, the soul doesn't die. I mean, look, I taught a class this weekend, a retreat, and there was a woman in the class who I've known her and her partner for many, many years. And her partner died, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 months ago. And right in the class, she was at the retreat, this woman. Uh, Suddenly, what manifested was the energy of her partner, the soul force of her partner. And it came into the room and it was sparkling with life, with love, with, pouring that energy of God, of spirit into this woman who's still kind of holding on to the sadness and grieving a little bit about what happened. I've learned in my own life, and Rudy also spoke about a little bit, not as much as I do, but that anyone you love, anyone who you're close to that way, they live in your heart. I mean, their physical body might disappear, but they live in your heart. And if you open your heart, they will always be there. They will be nurturing you, loving you, guiding you in your life. So, I mean, this whole thing of, I've learned the way to overcome the fear of death, which is so prevalent inside people, is to overcome the fear of life. Because death is this very obvious unknown quantity that every human being has to deal with. But when you get down to life itself is an unknown quantity. I mean, what we individually know about life, maybe 5, 10% of what goes on here. So it in itself is an unknown quantity. And learning to embrace it, to open to it, to love it, to allow it to guide you. You understand? It's not only overcoming life, but you're overcoming the unknown. And you're overcoming that step that every human being eventually has to take into the unknown, that state of non-being, of death, where the body is no longer living in the world. Soul never stops. The body is no longer. So, I don't, Rudy told me so many times, don't build shrines to me. Told me this. Don't build shrines. Don't drag me back to the earth. He said, don't worship me, don't anything of that. Just learn what I have to teach. That is the greatest thing you can do for me. More important than shrines and grieving and praying. And I mean, he said many times to me, rejoice if and when I leave the world, because I finally have got my freedom. I've spent lifetimes working to overcome my karma, to build inside myself a connection to God that was so profound that I will finally have my freedom. And when you conceive death in this way, it's no longer this intimidating, frightening force of energy, It's in many ways a blessing that one has spent their life serving God, serving higher energy. And when that all important moment comes when we leave the world, and it happens for everybody, instead of being a great tragedy and all that crying, it's a blessing. We have finally arrived at a place where lifetimes of inner work has taken us to where we can be one with higher energy in the universe. Now, these aren't Rudy's exact words, but they certainly were profoundly what he taught me when I was studying with him and what he still teaches me today. The fear of death, I've always, even before I met Rudy, was to me always truly the fear of life. If you stop being afraid to live in the world, to start taking chances with your life, living in opening to the unknown, really embracing life with all that it has to teach, that fear of death will vanish. Because there is no death. It's just the soul evolves. The soul moves from one state of consciousness to another with the purpose of learning to fulfill karma, learning to finally become one with God, to become free of all the suffering and the pain and the difficulty that goes on in the world. I mean, it took me years of inner work to just get to a place where this became part of my consciousness, what I'm talking about now. Although I don't, in my mind, remember Rudy using the words I'm using now, his very being was a manifestation of what I'm talking about. I mean, look, I survived a plane crash with him because he put his soul inside me. That was the only reason I walked away from How do you walk away from a plane crash? There were four of us, and Rudy put up a protective force, and he, put his soul inside the other three people that were in the plane, and he left. And he told me, he said he was going to live to 84 years old. But what I saw in the last year of his life was such remarkable spiritual growth. I had never seen anything like it. The profundity of it, the depth of it, his entire head changed, and I looked at him and all I saw was light coming out of him, spirit coming out of him. And he, in the last year of his life, was such a profound, inner work that he did that I'll never forget. He called me up. I was living in Texas at the time, and he said, you're coming up to New York next week. Prepare yourself. I'm not the person that you last saw. And I remember getting off the plane, and it was kind of a blessing because he met me at the airport, and that was really in itself an amazing thing. And I almost didn't even recognize. I mean, I recognized him, but the energy was so powerful coming out of him that I had no option but to just, meditate and take it in and understand what can happen to a human being when they truly serve God in this world. So there is no death. There is no life. There's just being. The soul evolving. And then there's also the madness goes on in the world. And it goes on because people are crippled by this fear of death. So they wind up killing other people, thinking, I don't know what they think, who knows. But if people just arrive at a place in themselves where that fear just disappears and they embrace God and embrace the endless energy that flows from the universe, the spirit, that force that's so powerful and so richly nourishing that it gets people beyond all these conceptualizations and all these conflicts, right, wrong, good, bad, life, death, all this polarity that controls the lives of most people that live here. So it honestly depends on each and every one of us. That's the best thing we can do for the people we love. Find our connection with God. Allow ourselves to be nurtured by that energy so we can pass that energy on to people that we love without judgment, without, polarity, without thinking what's right or wrong, but just unconditional love. I don't know what's right for any of you. I really don't. All I know is that I can come here and open, connect with spirit, and I can nurture you so that you can grow in your life. And you'll find out what works for you, what really helps you to grow and helps you to have humility and love and to be able to look out at the world with compassion and for all the stuff that goes on here. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? I mean, if you have some time on Friday, you should check my website out because the last three things that are going to be posted there have to do with living in the moment. And having to do with living in the moment, it has to do with the transcendence of life and death. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, there will be class on Thursday. Thank you. God bless you. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. And as I always say, look, you all are my teacher, my guru. I come here to sit with my teacher. So God bless you all for doing this inner work, for wanting to grow, for wanting to be connected to God, for demanding that I touch the deepest places of myself when I interact with you in these classes. So bless you. Thank you. And we'll have class again on Thursday.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.